Hi everyone, this is HM&S video number 64 and you are most welcome for it. I'm going to be off for approximately 2 months, but within those 2 months, I'm going to be dropping for you some videos that I recorded some times back. Now, in this video, we're going to talk about something called the measures of central tendency. Next video, we shall talk about how we can use Excel to get the measures of central tendency. But on this video, I want us to focus on 3 things. First, what are the measures of central tendency? And then 2, how to choose which measure of central tendency should we use? And then 3, we shall talk about the advantages and the disadvantages of those measures of central tendency. Let's now open our computer and we dive deeper into the main point of this video. Now, when you receive the dataset, the first thing you can think of is to calculate the measures of location and the measures of dispersion. But for now, we're not going to talk about the measures of dispersion. We shall first focus on the measures of location. And to drill even deeper into the measures of location, we shall talk about the measures of central location or the measures of central tendency. Now, the measures of central tendency helps us to get one value that represents the rest of the dataset. Now, if you receive a dataset like this one, you can actually make a decision based on this dataset because it's a small dataset. But assuming it's a very large dataset that you cannot see all the individual data points in that dataset, it's actually very difficult for you to make a decision based on those individual data points. That's where the measures of central tendency comes in. Now, the measures of central tendency aims at getting a value which is at the center of your dataset. Now, there are actually 3 measures of central tendency. That's the mean, that's actually the most used measure of central tendency, the median, and then the mode. Now, all these 3 measures of central tendency aims at getting one value from the middle of your dataset or from the center of your dataset to represent the entire dataset. Now, let's dive deeper into each of them. Let's start with the mean, which some people call it the average, and statisticians like calling it the expected value or the expectation of a dataset. Now, there are actually 3 types of mean. We have the arithmetic mean, the geometric mean, and then the harmonic mean. There's also weighted mean, which is just a type of arithmetic mean. We shall talk about it. For now, let's first put aside the harmonic mean and the geometric mean. Let's first focus on the arithmetic mean because that's actually the most common mean that's used by data analysts. So let's focus on the arithmetic mean. The arithmetic mean simply means summing up all the values and then you divide it by the number of the values or the count of the values. Actually, it's the sum of all the values divided by the number of values. And if you are to calculate it mathematically, let's say we have this data set here, which is showing the pocket money of some pupils from a certain school. To calculate the mean amount, you simply need to sum up the entire data set, then you divide it by the count. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 values here. And when you do that, you get the mean of $15. And that $15 is a number that's representing the entire data set that you see there. When you see the data set, you can see that there is someone who is having $10 and there is also someone who is having $14. So those 2 people cannot necessarily eat in a hotel that is actually charging $15. So the mean sometimes cannot be a good representation of the data set. But what exactly is this $15 meaning? This $15 actually means, on average, a student of that school owns a pocket money of about $15. Let's get to one more example. We have this hotel price per night example. Those are the prices for the hotel, let's say maybe in Lagos. And to calculate the mean, you first sum up all the values, then you divide it by the count. We have 10 different prices there. You get a mean of 110. Now, this 110 definitely, if you see the dataset, it's actually not a good representation of this dataset because we have some rooms that's having a price that's actually way less than $110. And also there's one that's having $250, which is way much more than $110. So even again, this mean is actually not a good representation of that data set. But the $110 mean the average price of hotel room per night in Lagos, it's 110. But sometimes the mean is actually not a good representation of the data set, like for our case here. Now, because of that, let's dive deeper into another measure of central tendency. That's the median. Now, the median is simply the middle value of your data set. And it's actually calculated differently if your dataset is having odd number and even number. So let's start by calculating it if you have an odd number. Now, we have this pocket money example again here. And for us to calculate the median, we need to first rearrange the dataset in either ascending order or descending order. Now, ascending order is rearranging it from smallest to biggest or from largest, and descending order is rearranging it from biggest to smallest or from largest to smallest. Now, after rearranging this in ascending order or descending order, you pick the value which is in the middle, and that value which is in the middle is your median. Now, like for our case here, if you see very well, $15 is actually in the middle of this data set because it's having two values on its right, again another two values on its left, making it to sit in the middle of that data set. So that makes the $15 to be our median. Now, if you remember very well, when we calculated the mean of this data set, we also got $15. That should tell you that the mean and the median of a certain set of data can actually be the same, like for our case here. But one thing you need to know is that for every data set, there's always only one mean and also only one median. Now, if the mean and the median of a data set can actually be the same, why actually should we mind about which one should we use? Let's get to another example. We are having this same example, but assuming one of the students got another huge sum of money and his pocket money is now $1,000. Let's calculate the median for this data set again. First, you rearrange the data set in ascending order or descending order. Then you pick the value which is in the center. That's still the $15, as you can see. Now, the median is still the same, but if you calculate the mean is now $211. That's where the difference comes in. Now, if you're creating a data model in Excel, that actually we shall see how we can create data models later on. So if you're creating a data model where you are guessing that in future the data set might change, then you better use the median than the mean. So that's actually how you can calculate the median for odd numbers. Now let's go to even number. This hotel room prices per night example is having 10 data values. That means the number of values is an even number. So let's see how we can calculate the median for an even number. First of all, you rearrange the data set in either ascending order or descending order. For this case, we have rearranged it in descending order. Then you get the value which is in the center. Now for the case of even number, there's actually no one value which is at the center of the data set. For our case here, there are two values. There is 140 and 72. So those two values now will be the value which is in our center. Now for you to get the median, you get the mean of those two values. Now for our case, we're going to sum up those two values. Then you divide it by 2. And when you do that, you get the median of 106. So that's actually the median of that data set. And when you have to calculate the mean is still $110. Now, this one again should also make you come to a conclusion that the median and the mean can actually be a value which is not part of the data set. As you can see, 106 is not even part of the data set, or it's not a data point in that data set, but it's actually the median. And also 110 is not even part of the data set, but it's the mean of the data set. So if you want a value which is part of your data set, then that's when you use the next measure of central tendency, the mode. Now, the mode is the value that appears most frequently. Some people call it the most popular value. Now, on our hotel price per night example, we have these values here. If you see very well, $150 appears twice, but then the rest of the values is all appearing once. That means the $150 is now our mode because it's the most frequent data value in that data set, and it's also part of that data set. So that's the advantage of using the mode. Now there's something I want to bring to your attention. A data set can actually be without a mode, or it can have even more than one mode. Like for example, in our pocket money example, all the data points you're seeing there is appearing only once. There's none that's repeating itself. So that means that data set has no mode. Again, if you get another group of students or pupils, then that's actually their pocket money. You can see that from that data set, $20 is appearing twice, and also $15 is also appearing twice. That means this data set is actually having two modes, $15 and then $20. All of them, they are the modes of this data set. So it's having two modes. So a data set can have no mode, or it can have more than one mode. Now, if the data set is having more than one mode, then it's called multimodal. And if it's having two modes, like for our case here, there's actually a special name for it. It's called a bimodal data. Bimodal data set is actually just a type of a multimodal data set. Now, before we go to the summary, let's see this example here. assuming you collected the yearly revenue maybe for supermarkets in your area. Then you calculate the mean. The mean is $15,200. Again, you calculate the median, and the median is $15,000. And then now you calculate the mode, and the mode is $12,000. Now, all those values are representing that data set, but the values are different. Which one should you now use as a data analyst? Now, this is where you need to be a little bit fair with statistics and decision making. Now, if you want to influence many people to start up a supermarket in that area, then you should report the mean. And if the government just want to know the typical revenue in that area, then you should report the median. And for example, if the government wants to increase the tax for the supermarkets in that area, then you might report the mode. Now let's get to this important summary. Now we are going to see the summary of those measures of central tendency. We shall see the advantage of each, the limitation of each, and which one should you actually use in which situation. Now let's start with the mean. The biggest advantage of the mean is that it uses all the data values on your data set. And that's actually the reason why the mean is the most popular measure of central tendency. But the limitation is that it is affected by the outliers since it uses the entire data set. Outliers are like data points of values that are way too big or too smaller than the rest of the values. So if you have such a data set, then the mean might not be a good measure for you. And also, it can only be done on numerical data. That one is also another limitation for the mean. So when the dataset has no outlier, that's when you should use the mean. Or when the dataset is actually normally distributed. That means most of the data points are actually clustered around the middle of your dataset. Now let's get to the median. Now for the median, it is actually not affected by the outliers. And the biggest limitation is that it doesn't use all the data values in your dataset. It simply uses the data which is in the middle of your dataset. Then also, the median can only be done on numerical data. Then you should use the median if the dataset is having outliers. Now let's get to the mode. The biggest advantage of mode is that it can be used on both numerical and categorical data. That's non-numerical data. And also it always gives us a value which is part of the dataset. That's actually another big plus for the mode. Now, the limitation of the mode is also that it doesn't use the entire data points in your dataset. And you should use the mode when you want the value which is part of your dataset to represent your data points, or when you're working on non-numerical data. Like for example, if you enter a room and you realize that most of the people in that room is putting on a green t-shirt, then the green color will become the model color of the t-shirts in that room. That's something that you cannot do with the mean or the median. Yeah, that is it for this particular video. If you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe, and if you found this video interesting, give it a like, then you share it with your friends. This is a video where we talked about how to set up a proper data set in Excel. You can click on it, then you go and watch it. Until next video, HM&S video number 65, then we meet again. Thank you.